In this update, we've got a very active subtropical jet stream and multiple cool fronts that will set the stage for several rounds of severe storms in the week ahead. So let's take a look at the big picture and show you what's happening this afternoon. Here's your active subtropical jet stream. And then further to the north, we've got that trough that's digging in. That was the area that brought all the colder conditions and the blizzard-like conditions to the Sierras and back into the Cascades. Out ahead of it, we do have a little boundary and a short wave that will be moving across that subtropical jet stream. That will set the stage for a round of severe storms later on this afternoon into the overnight hours. And then a more significant system that will start to develop with this trough that's coming ashore across the west coast. That is the system that will be traversing across the subtropical jet stream and set the stage for multiple rounds of severe storms across the southern plains as well as into the southeast. So I appreciate all my followers out there. If you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns on North America as well as the tropics, hit the subscribe button and follow along all my daily content. So let's take a look at the setup this afternoon. We've got the warmer conditions. In fact, many more records that will be broken later on today. And here's the warmer temperatures aloft. You can actually see where that first mini cool front that will be taking shape across Wisconsin through Illinois, shifting all the way into portions of Oklahoma tonight. Back behind it, there's all the colder air and winter type air back behind into the northwest. But the leading edge where that clash in temperatures, we are going to be starting to see the beginning stages of some severe storms later on this afternoon into the overnight hours. The Storm Prediction Center does in fact have a huge area of a marginal risk for severe storms. I think all this starts to take shape further north this afternoon into Wisconsin and starts to build into Iowa through Illinois and starts to fishtail and kind of back build further south into Missouri as well as into Arkansas. It'll try to make it into portions of Texas, but the southern branch too will start to get active across Louisiana, and they'll have their own severe storms to contend with, as well as an isolated threat or a tornado risk later on this afternoon into the overnight hours. So I think it gets going around 3-4 o'clock in Wisconsin, but once we get towards 9, 10, 11 o'clock into Milwaukee, through those areas into northwestern Illinois, new portions of the Davenport region, I think that's an area that we have to be concerned about of an isolated spin up tornado. But also further south into the Shreveport region, all the way down in New Orleans, you have your own little area of possibility of seeing an isolated tornado. Because if we zoom in and look at the latest high resolution guidance and shows you kind of some of the elicity values, this just shows you where the potential updrafts could likely unfold, and the greater the number, the higher probability of you seeing some potentially larger hail and some isolated tornado threat. This is why we do have a marginal risk as well as a slight tornado risk within this region. On the northern branch of this system, it's likely extending through areas into the Milwaukee region, down to the Davenport region, through northwestern portions of Illinois. And then you got the southern flank too, that's also highlighted with that 2% probability. Notice it starts to fade as it drifts further south. They start to have a little bit more capping inversion, especially as you get down into Texas. It's more of a conditional risk down there. So if you have any storm that does try to break the cap, that could turn severe, but likely not if not any is going to be able to penetrate that boundary layer later on tonight. But once you head up into southeastern Oklahoma, you have a little bit higher probability of seeing some of those isolated severe storms. So if we take a look at the radar depiction, here's the latest update from the HRRR guidance about 3 o'clock. So I think this thing gets going 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon over those areas into central Wisconsin. That'll fishtail down into Iowa. And you got the little drier slot. Nothing's happening as of right now. But then further to the south, you got the southern mode back from Shreveport all the way down into New Orleans. You'll have your own severe storms to contend with. But I do feel that once we hit towards 8, 9, 10, 11, towards the midnight time frame, this is all going to start to fill in across those areas into Milwaukee, through the Davenport region, and heading into northwestern portions of Illinois, and then further to the south through central Missouri, heading into southeastern Oklahoma. Notice it starts to fade, right? It starts to impact some of that capping inversion, some of that warmer air aloft. And I think the cap does hold for a good part of Texas there, and not seeing much of anything except far extreme portions of East Texas. And then there's the southern mode, I think, gets going this afternoon across Shreveport. Those dive southeastward. And so by the time you head into the overnight hours, those areas across central Mississippi and southern Alabama into the Florida Panhandle will likely be under the gun of some of those stronger to isolated severe storms. And then there's the day tomorrow. So as we go into the overnight hours, that will continue to shift in through Arkansas, far extreme portions of East Texas, through the Louisiana region, and heading up into Mississippi, for tomorrow. And if you break this thing down for you, just kind of over the next 2 days, you got basically 3 areas, right? You have a low pressure center that's highlighted over the Carolinas right now that will be lifting further north, scooting those areas into the coastal regions. As further you live into the coast, into North Carolina, back into Virginia, back into Jersey, through Long Island, you're going to be seeing some heavier rain showers over the next 2 days. And then you got that other piece of energy that's coming out of Wisconsin, heading into Iowa, especially into Illinois, back into Indiana, and through areas of Michigan. And then you got the southern mode too. So not much to contend with across southeastern Oklahoma. Really not much in Texas with the capping hold as far as like East Texas. But once you get into Louisiana, and especially into Mississippi and Alabama, and heading into the Florida Panhandle, you'll likely see definitely some more significant rains, especially as you live closer to the I-10, I-20 corridor between now and tomorrow afternoon. So heading into Wednesday, we're still warm, folks. We got these little mini cool fronts, but we're still overall very warm conditions across the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. Really the only cooler game in town is for those areas across the west, but definitely those areas into Western Canada there, with definitely some colder temperatures. But you do have a more active subtropical jet stream. So that low pressure center that's highlighted across, out here off the west coast into the Pacific right now, will be diving across, taking through this subtropical jet, and a very powerful jet streak will start to take shape across the southern plains. As we head into peak heating of the afternoon on Thursday, I think that's the system that will be setting the stage for likely multiple rounds Thursday, Friday, and likely into Saturday across the southern plains into the southeast. So that's going to be your main event in the week ahead, and it's going to be tapping into some higher dew points, right? We are in March, we are in a transitional month, so we still got some very warm conditions to contend with, and some cooler conditions to contend with too, because technically we're still in winter, folks. And as those temperatures start to clash, there's a more active dry line that will be setting up across West Texas. But to the right of there, that's where the moist area is. That's where you're talking about dew points well into the 60s, and those likely starts to surge into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, into East Texas, and even getting into the Oklahoma region, heading up into Louisiana, into Arkansas, and it likely gets as far north as Tennessee, maybe even portions of Kentucky. So this whole area is likely going to be seeing part of severe storms heading into your Friday, Saturday timeframe. So here's Thursday. This is the latest update from the Storm Prediction Center. They did in fact upgrade from yesterday to that slight risk for severe storms from the Storm Prediction Center, mainly just east of that dry line out there, that boundary layer, if you live in that moist sector, that's where you have the probability of seeing those storms turning severe, more of an elevated threat on Thursday, highlighted across portions of western portions of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, through the Metroplex into East Texas, and heading into Shreveport. Here's your overall learning model, kind of hinting at looking at some of those higher dew points further north into Oklahoma, back into Arkansas. But so yeah, don't, kind of expect this area to kind of likely going to be expand and increase in coverage as we get closer to this event. And it's got, very warm waters to contend with. It's got a lot of moisture. You got the upward rising motion air. Here's your overall low pressure center, likely highlighted over across Nebraska. And it's just to the southeast quadrant of that. That's where you have the greatest lift. And this is where the learning model actually takes the precipitation and some of the severe storms likely expanding into the Oklahoma region. This would continue to move off into the east. Would it likely include those areas into Arkansas, into Louisiana, and likely into the overnight hours on Thursday night. Then once we head into Friday, I think it's even a more significant event, especially those areas further south into the I-10, I-20 corridor. You've got dew points approaching 70, folks. So that's very warm, moist air. That's more like April type dew points versus beginning of March. So, and then we've got that cool front, and you got the mid 50 range. That's kind of the demarcation line of where you could possibly see some severe storms. So yeah, likely all the way up into Kentucky is definitely not ruled out, but further to the south into the Dixie Alley region, that is going to be likely your main event. And this is where we are right now. Day 5 risk. Storm Prediction Center has highlighted into East Texas, going through the Shreveport region, central Louisiana, central Mississippi, as well as central Alabama, heading into the Florida Panhandle. And then there's the learning model, a little bit more bullish, extending those areas well further north, looking at some of those higher dew points, saying where you got moisture supply with the low pressure further north. So this is going to be a little bit more likely scenario as the Storm Prediction Center has more confidence and would likely expand the coverage and likely increase the coverage as we get closer to this event. Because man, look at the moisture now, folks. I mean, it's pretty much almost off the chart. The water vapor is likely going to be really intense, especially further south. So those areas into central Alabama are going to be under the gun, with all 3 modes of severe storms and tornadoes are going to be a huge concern with this particular setup. And the larger hail heading into Friday was likely going to be your most intense day. But it doesn't end there, folks. I think it goes all the way into Saturday, as that same storm system will continue pushing off into Georgia, through much of Florida now, and heading into the Carolinas, all the way up into North Carolina, as well as into possibly even Virginia as we head deeper into the day on Saturday. But behind that, there's the more significant cool front. I'm gonna say it a cool front, not technically a cold front, because it really just drops temperatures kind of back to average where you typically are supposed to be at for the first week of March versus where you've been, and well into the 80s and upper 70s in Illinois. Now you're talking highs in the mid 40s. So that's going to be more likely what you're kind of used to this time of year. You can see where the warm sector is, and still where we have that severe storms with highs in the upper 70s down here in Georgia through the Carolinas. And that's where we're still going to have that severe storms before that cold front enters. But once that cold front moves through, that'll squash the atmosphere, and that'll leave a very nice day for coming up on Sunday. But overall, here's the breakdown. So you got the west side, you got the storm system out, the trough out west that brought all the intermountain snows. Notice the dry slot as we head towards those wildfire regions. Unfortunately, they kind of miss out on the opportunity of seeing rain with these systems. Everything's likely is going to be shifting east of them, and likely not getting much of anything as well as far as needed precipitation to help with those wildfires and much of the Texas Panhandle and much of western Oklahoma and western Kansas. But once we impact and take advantage of some of that moisture, and with that lift mechanism through the more active subtropical jet, you're likely going to be go anywhere from maybe a ½ inch to possibly an inch into the Dallas-Fort Worth region, as well as in the Oklahoma region. But we live in East Texas, eastern Oklahoma, but especially as you head into Illinois, 1 to 2 inches through those areas, into Missouri, back into Kentucky. But further south, look at those, folks, 2 to 4 inches, and even a swath through central Alabama and central Georgia here could likely see 5, 6, possibly 7 inches. And even up the coast, folks, a lot of rainfall with this system in the days to come, likely 2, 3, possibly 4 inches. And a lot of these areas up the coast, and lighter amounts as you head through the Ohio Valley. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch my next update where I protect you before and after the storm.